Hello, I'm back with another video and I hope you're all doing really well. In today's video, we're going to talk about dating. Right, so dating life could be really difficult, and obviously, for some people, they would date, the majority of people would date because obviously they're looking for the love of their lives or um, someone to spend the rest of their lives with, hopefully. um, and then some people are dating, they're not looking for any relationship, and for the two people involved in that situation, and if they're okay with that and that's what they want to do, and that's fine. But like I said, the majority of people would be dating because they're looking for someone to spend the rest of their lives with. But it's hard to find the one. You never know. You just have to go on different dates and see. And it could be hard work going on dates, especially on men. It's very difficult because even though you can split bills, because obviously if you're going on dates, right, you're gonna have to spend money, and it's not small. And especially because, like I said, it can be difficult for men because they want to they want to impress the girl they're taking on a date. And so obviously you're gonna be taking them to restaurants and activities, just depending on what you want to do for a date. But the whole point is to try and impress the person you're taking on a date, because by the time you choose someone to go on a date with, you've already liked that person. Hopefully you've already seen the person, you've read about them, you've spoken to them, and you have asked them some of the most important questions, hopefully, and you are happy with the answers. So the next step is you want to get to know them more, and so you're asking them out on a date. And so you obviously want to impress that person, and hopefully vice versa. So there's always going to be money involved in that, because most people go to restaurants, and obviously you're going to spend on food and beverage and stuff like that. And especially if you end up liking what you see, then you might want to go on a second date. And then by the time you end up getting engaged or married or living together or whatever, you'll be going on so many different dates. And don't get me wrong, obviously it's not just the man who spends on bills, like restaurant bills. You can split the bills. Some women don't mind paying um, um, some of the bills, or splitting in half. But and then other women prefer that the man takes care of all the financial when it comes to paying bills at restaurants. When they've asked a girl to go on a date, they prefer the guy to pay for all the restaurant bills. And so if that's a girl you're with that expects you to be paying bills all the time, every time you go out on a date, and you really like it, and so you keep going on dates, which means you keep paying every time you go on dates. You could go on 2, 3, 4, 5 dates, who knows, even more than that, and every time you're going, you're paying. So dating is expensive, to be honest. If you think about it, it's a very expensive exercise. By the time you end up getting married, you'd have spent so much money just on dating, on seeing each other, and that, because you're trying to impress each other, so you don't want to look cheap. Because because you could go on cheap dates, to be honest, where you don't have to spend a lot of money. You could literally just go on a date, and that involves going to the park or to the playground. I know that's the place for children, but you can just go there and sit and see birds, feed birds, look at the trees, look at nature, or nature walking, and that's your date, and that's it. So it doesn't involve buying food or drinks. Maybe you could pass to the shop quickly and get some drinks and some sandwiches, and that's your day. So that's cheaper compared to, going to the restaurant and stuff like that. So there are cheaper dates where you don't have to spend so much money, but because you are at the dating stage is a very early stage of relationship. Hopefully this will develop into a relationship if you're seeing potential. So because it's still an early stage of relationship, everyone wants to impress the other. So the guy wants to impress the girl, and part of impressing is to show that if we end up getting married, I can provide for you. So going on cheap dates where the guy is paying might not come across as someone who can provide in the girl's viewpoint. So the girl might think, well, you're always taking me on these cheap dates, really cheap. You don't take me to such and such, you know what I mean? And because you're thinking these dates are really cheap, so I don't think you have as much money as you say that you have. So because of that, I don't think you can provide for me, and I want someone who will be able to provide for me. And you might lose the girl. Some people just leave the relationship from the dating stage. They just leave because they're seeing that the guy doesn't have enough money, because they looking, part of wanting to marry someone is to see that, especially for girls, they want someone a guy who can provide for them. So if they see that you're always taking them on cheap dates, then they think you don't have money. You might tell them you have a good job that pays you really well, you got savings and stuff like that, so money is not a big problem, and you can provide for them if they end up getting married. But if they keep seeing that you're not really spending on them at the early stage of the relationship, which is the dating bit, by taking them on cheap dates all the time, then they might not believe you. So they might not want to continue. They might think you're lying, actually, when it comes to the finance, and they might end up that relationship quickly. So the guys might think, you got to impress, so you got to spend and spend and spend, and you're thinking, how long will this be? Like, how long will you be dating for until you can get to a place where you don't have to spend so much money on the other person, or both of you don't have to spend so much money. Women spend as well, even when it comes to dating. It's not just the men. It just depends on the person you're with, or the person you're taking out on dates. But yeah, it's a very costly it's very expensive. I've thought about this. Like, dating is so expensive. It's not cheap to date. So what happens, if just because you have money and you can spend on dating, it doesn't mean you want to spend it, and you might try to explain that to the person you're taking out on date. Like, look, money is not a problem, but I don't really want to waste it on dating, because at the end of the day, we just want, yes, I want to impress you, but we want, at the end of the end goal is to be together and get married, and we'll be able to provide, cover everything, all the costs. Like, obviously, rent will be covered, food will be covered. That won't be a problem. But it makes no sense to waste so much money on dating when we can just move on to the next thing. When you can just do, maybe not move on to the next thing, but when we can just go on cheap dates, because they know you work at such and such place. They've seen you go to work. You've taken them to work, and vice versa. So and you even maybe have seen their paycheck, so they work, for sure they work somewhere, and you know how much they earn, 100%, because you've seen all the evidence. So they have money. But at the same time, you have plans, right? You agree on the plans that you might have. Both of you have actually similar plans, and you want to achieve such and such. These are financial plans. And it will make no sense to be spending so much money on dating when you basically both agree on your future plans, what you really want. So it doesn't, you could explain that, you can explain that to each other, and it doesn't have to be a costly thing to date. You can just choose to do cheap dates. It doesn't mean you are cheap. You're cheap. It just means you try to concentrate. You're both trying to concentrate on the plans that you have, the bigger future financial plans that you have, and that could work. But then you have other people who want you to splash on them every single time you take them out. You got to spend so much, so big on them every single time you go out. Even like when it comes to the engagement ring, some people don't get a very expensive engagement ring, and other people buy a very expensive one. Of course, if you can afford it and you don't mind, go ahead. But not everyone is rich, and just because you're not rich, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get married. You shouldn't have someone to spend the rest of your life with, companionship. It doesn't have to be expensive to be in a relationship, does it? Because you can always improve yourself, right? If you're not rich now, you could always work on yourself and get somewhere financially. So anyway, this is all I was going to share with you today, and I'll be back with more things to share. Anyway, so thank you so much for listening, and take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.